we need to move on to the main story of the day because we've completely stuffed this one up. And after the disgraced BBC presenter Huw Edwards was given a suspended sentence yesterday for receiving, opening and requesting more child abuse images and child rape images, one of his victims has spoken out. Now, this is not someone who was in those particular images that were in the court case. This is the young man whose mother first blew the whistle on Edwards when she went to the BBC and said he was paying her teenage son for sexual imagery, which was being used to fund a drug habit. It ended up in the papers because the BBC didn't do anything about it. And everything that's happened to Huw since has sort of come out of this. Now, the Mirror has interviewed him about Huw Edwards' sentence, and here is a clip of what he said.
And I was just in shock, really. But yeah, I was watching him. This sort of give me shivers down my body, like I don't know. When he's saying he wouldn't be able to go to prison and things because of his mental health, and he's been examined, and I thought it's just a load of rubbish. He shouldn't be allowed to get away with things like this. This was happening just as bad to his wife and his children, just as it is to him, really. This is their reputation too, you know. And I do think about them quite a lot, actually. It's definitely not fair on him, definitely. And his wife, I don't even imagine how she must feel. This really shook me to my core, and it's disturbed me, really. And it just brings back everything every time I see his face, you know. And I just feel for the victims and the people that this is harming.
Now, we disguised the man's voice there because he needs his identity protecting. But you can tell, Dan, from the way he's speaking, from the pattern of his speech, that he's very anxious, I would say, about this. Very nervous, very, the little shot there we saw of him, his hands sort of fidgeting. He's by no means come to terms with what happened to him. And what happened to him is nowhere near as bad as what happened to the younger people who are in some of these images that Huw Edwards was sentenced for. And part of why he is in this state and why he says he's so shocked and sickened is because Huw Edwards isn't in jail, is he? Can you take us through this? Why has he got a suspended sentence?
Yes, so after researching into the case and covering this case in a lot of depth, he pleaded guilty initially to a hearing at Westminster Magistrates quite a few weeks ago, which the magistrate took in Huw's side, and apparently he showed remorse for the crimes that he's committed, and his mental health has deteriorated over the recent years, like his wife said when she announced he was the BBC presenter in question. He was an inpatient at a medical hospital. So we know he's got a history of troubled mental health and, like you said, a drug issue as well.
Oh. So, and also we know that the person who sent Huw these images himself, when he was at court, he only got a suspended sentence.
Yeah.
And what he had done in terms of sending these images out was considered a more serious crime than what Huw did in terms of receiving them. And so if he only got suspended, Huw Edwards was only ever going to get a suspended sentence. This was kind of nailed on. And legal commentators have said that the way his sentence was explained, it makes perfect sense with the sentencing guidelines. It's absolutely where the guidelines are and what you have to do to get there. And that's what he should be getting. If he's suspended, he could be returned to jail at some point, but it's not likely so long as he's well behaved. But what do you think, everybody? Do you think that Huw Edwards getting a suspended sentence is something which, as the magistrate suggested, is going to help his rehabilitation? Is this something which is going to, somehow make him a better human being? A warning, if you like, that will somehow make him reevaluate what he's doing and make him not do this kind of thing in future. Richard says, Huw had inordinate amount of wealth and power. What happens to white-collar criminals having the harshest punishments? Other guys supplying him images and clips got off with too little. There is an issue here, isn't there, about, I suppose, not just the sentences on these things, but the volume of these sentences and the fact we cannot put them all in jail. I was listening to something on the radio the other day that said there are 500,000 children being abused in this country every year. 500,000, 500,000. And if only a fraction of them ever report it to the police, and the police have to investigate it, and they don't all go to court and they don't all go to jail. So what are the chances, you know, and this is one of the things, the deterrent effect that we've heard about a lot. If someone sends someone else an image or decides to send someone else an image and they see that Huw Edwards has got suspended, what's going to stop them doing it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think we've seen a lot in recent months. People have been given custodial sentences for crimes that are not as severe as this. And I know we can't put them all in jail, but surely we need to be making an example and say we're cracking down on these crimes. They're not like a normal, less severe crime. They're actually quite sickening crimes. There's children as young as 6 and 7 in these images.
Yeah. And Huw Edwards responded to those images saying, send me more.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't say, eek, that's horrible, I never want to see it again. Leslie says he should have gone to prison for the full term, not a suspended sentence. He will go on to do it again because he knows he's got away with it now. Was it 6 months or 9 months was his term? I think it was 9 months suspended, wasn't it?
6 months suspended by 2 years.
Yeah, so the starting point, apparently, Leslie, the starting point, which you have to, the magistrate starts out and has to chip things off or add things to, depending on the severity of how you deal with it. For these offences is 1 year. It's 12 months in jail is the sentence. Now, bear in mind, Huw Edwards pleaded not guilty at the first available opportunity. That means you knock a quarter of the sentence off. That is the guideline. After that, he knocked a bit more off. And then because of his mental health, because of his obvious remorse. And again, that is standard sentencing stuff. If someone is caught and goes to jail and goes, oh my God, I'm sorry, you knock a bit off. And that gives him 6 months. And then at that point, you have to weigh up sending him to jail or letting him have a suspended sentence. And the suspension has got a few conditions attached to it. But basically, Dan, he's effectively free to walk out of the court, which is what looks bad to a lot of people. He's walked out, we've gone straight to a hospital, hasn't he, where he's sort of residing at the moment. Had he gone to jail, I would have thought, probably appealed it because he'll be made an example of, be treated differently to other people because of his status, which may make his crimes a bit worse to some people, but in the eyes of the law, there can't be a difference. And we need to bear in mind, I think, and for Leslie as well and for other people, every single sentence in this country is reduced by half anyway for good behaviour.
Yeah.
So he would only ever have probably, if he had gone to jail for the full 12-month term, Leslie, he'd only have done the 6 months, which is, again, it's still crap, really, for what he did. I mean, Dan, you would have had an awful lot of response from members of the public about this online and so on. And people generally, I'm assuming, are anti the idea of Huw getting a suspended sentence.
Yeah, I mean, when we broke the story that his sentence was suspended, the comments we received online and reaction from people was, like you said, people were not happy. This was the man at the top of the BBC. We knew his face. He was in our homes every single day. And to hear what was going on behind closed doors and for him to walk away with it, we saw him arrive with a little suitcase and then leave the courtroom with that suitcase, a free man. Yeah, there was a lot of anger.
Yeah, and Kim says, this is disgraceful. He should have had a custodial sentence. The dirty pervert is allowed to walk free and you're banging up little old ladies for making a comment on Facebook. The world has gone mad. As explained, Kim, in the eyes of the law, they have to weigh up the likelihood of reoffending and the likelihood of damage that has been caused by the crime, and also the guilty plea or the not guilty plea. So in the case of some of those little old ladies who have been saying things about, let's say, the far-right riots on Facebook, if they've pleaded guilty early, they will get the same 1/4 off as Huw did. If they have done something which is to be in receipt, if you like, of an incitement to riot, then they will get a limited punishment. Whereas if they have incited someone else to commit a crime and in that have caused injury, and especially to police officers, which always gets penalised more, I'm afraid, even than injury to children, then that's going to affect their sentencing. What Huw Edwards did was to be part of a marketplace, which is incredibly horrid and nasty, but he didn't create those first images. He didn't send those images on to other people. we think, but a lot of his hard drives were wiped by the time the police got to them, so we're not entirely sure. But the court has to judge on the evidence they've got. Leslie says it's wrong. Those who are the victims have to live with it for the rest of their lives. What about their mental health? So we've seen Dan with the victim that Mira interviewed. He's obviously not dealing with some of this too well. There are a number of children out there who were involved in some of these images that were taken of them. But it remains there is someone out there abusing those children and raping those children and making the images and circulating them and helping to create this market, making money out of people like Huw Edwards and the person who supplied him to buy this stuff off them in the first place. Surely they're the ones that need to be, tackled and given the harshest sentences.
Yeah, I mean, we know that these images and videos were exchanged on WhatsApp, which we know is encrypted, so it's hard to recover messages, but surely there is a way to track down where the original source came from. IP addresses are traceable, so I think we need to tackle getting in touch with WhatsApp, checking these people's messages, and getting to the bottom of this, because, like you said, these are the people at the heart of it, causing these awful, awful crimes to happen.
Yeah, and I think we also need to bear in mind that if there's 500,000 children being abused in this country every day, then the chances are everybody watching this programme probably knows someone who has seen images like this, I'm afraid, who has asked for them, sought them, searched for them, stored them, or otherwise come across them and not mentioned it to anybody else, and who hasn't reported to the police and hasn't gone, I don't want to see any more like that, thank you very much. Everybody knows somebody that has this stuff on their phone already, all right? The whole sort of stranger danger alert we had in the 70s and 80s about you need to worry about the big, bad, horrible man out there. You're most likely to be abused by someone in your family, by someone that you know, by a friend of your mum's, things like that. Those are the people that you need to worry about. And unfortunately, what the Huw Edwards scandal really shows, Dan, isn't it, is that it's the people that are familiar to you. Yeah. And that's the shocking thing. I think people seem to think that what Huw Edwards has done is unusual, and that we all feel a sense of betrayal because we trusted him and he was in our living rooms. But that literally happens with every case of child abuse pretty much in the country, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's not nice to think about, but it is definitely people that we all know. Like you said, 500,000 people each day. We're going to know someone who has these disturbing and quite sickening, indecent images on their phone. It could be somebody walking past us in the street and we would never know.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing that needs tackling, I think, perhaps. Wes says, as someone who grew up in care, I feel this is all being seen from outside the box. Quite right. The stories and the scars I've seen would make your toes curl. This is very much so. It's one of the things that gets discussed by people like us who haven't grown up in care, Wes, and who don't have the same experience as others do. People do some fairly grim things. And, when I started out in journalism, newspapers didn't report it, because it was the kind of thing, Dan, that our editors would say that would make people spit their cornflakes. Yeah. You cannot put that in a family newspaper. You cannot report it. And I can remember some of the first child abuse cases I did as like a cub reporter on local papers, and it was very, very, very washed out and anodyne. Things have changed a lot. We now report quite a lot of detail that we would never have been able to do back then. We know more than we ever did. But I think we still think it's the big bad devil out there, don't we? It's the demon. And I think, can we pull up Polly Hudson's column that's in the paper today? And she makes some very valid points in here. And she talks about other cases. So Eamon Tuati, a 41-year-old from Sunderland with hundreds of photos and videos, children as young as 6 months old who walked free from court. Matthew Wood from Pembrokeshire, who had 1,000 images of children being abused and raped, including newborn babies. Joseph Swift from Ipswich, who was a scout leader. And he downloaded thousands of repellent videos. Then there was a scout leader called Jonathan Craven with videos of children as young as 3. I mean, she has a long list of people who've come out of courts recently who are not called Huw Edwards, who have not had the notice or the attention, who are walking free with images of children, exactly the same as Huw Edwards did. He's being treated the same as every other criminal who has done this same crime. And either we either have to lock up more people for longer and be harsher, Well, we have to find a way to stop them doing it in the first place, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, in the Polly column, what shocked me was there was a case where the police had to stop counting the images because there were just too many, and this person walked off scot-free. Okay, he's on a sex offenders register, but that doesn't stop him interacting with children. He can see a child in the park, they can see a child in the supermarket, and it's sickening that these people are amongst us in the community and nobody knows who they are.
Yeah, and yet someone like Huw Edwards, everyone knows who he is, and everyone's going to know who he is. He's not going to be able to go through the rest of his life without people going, oh, it's Huw Edwards. That's going to be it forever. He needs to find a way to rehabilitate himself and rebuild his relationships with his family, I would have thought. But I don't know how he could possibly come back from it, or how you can make things better for the rest of the world. But I think we need to bear in mind that he's not the only one.
Yeah,
unfortunately, and he's in a lot of homes, and they're in a lot of places. And we could also perhaps be a bit more honest about our sentencing in this country. When someone gets a 4-year sentence, they've only got 2. When someone gets a life sentence, they've only got 7. Right? It's just, let's just be honest about it. We don't lock them up for as long as we used to. That just is the case.